Thank everyone for coming in. A bunch of new faces, so that's always terrific. And I want to thank Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Photo Shelter, Epson, and B&H for always helping us out. Um, I met Stefan, I don't know, 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago already by now, Stefan?
I think
Feels
that's
like that?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Sandra introduced us, right? Like it was
yeah,
a while ago.
yeah. Time flies by, like we were saying before. Um, and terrific photographer, and it's really wonderful to see someone from like not the starting point, but at a different point to now being on projections with stunning work. So, Stefan, share your screen. Off we go. Tell us the story.
All right, wait, let me figure out how to share my screen. Give me a second. Hmm.
There you go.
All
Okay.
right, you can see this, right?
Yes,
Yeah, here
you're
we
all
go.
good, Stefan.
All right. Okay, so I'll back up a little bit. So just to kind of give you my background. So I'm originally Swiss. I moved to the US in 2007, lived in the US, I think for 14 years. And then when COVID started, I started traveling. So it was kind of counterintuitive. I I ran a business at the time, and so we used to have an office, all that stuff. Everything went remote. I was like, oh, why would I stay in San Diego, where I was at the time? And I just started kind of traveling around. And so I was all over Europe first, then all over Africa. And then the war in Ukraine started. And at that point, I'd been traveling, I think, close to 3 years at that point. Yeah. And so I decided, hey, I should maybe could just go do some more useful traveling versus just kind of fun traveling. And so I'll end up going to Ukraine and did a lot of humanitarian aid work. So I got there right when the Russians left Kiev. So this is pretty early on in the war, and I ended up buying a van and would pick up medical aids, that type of stuff from Poland because the men couldn't really cross the border. And so I would pick up the aid from the border, drive it across, and then drive all across Ukraine and deliver the aid. So that was kind of the starting point where I got into the more, I guess, the conflict zones, I'd say. And so from there, as the aid side got a bit more professionalized, there was less of a need for me to be doing it. And I'd been doing photography for quite a few years before that, but more of like a fun travel type thing. And so while in Ukraine, started taking a lot of pictures of kind of what was going on and really enjoyed taking pictures. And then also started working with some journalists that they were there, they like needed somebody to take pictures for an assignment they had. I went with on that. It was like, oh, this is really cool. And so really kind of randomly fell into it, to be honest. And so just have stuck with it ever since. Really enjoy the work. And for me, it's all about the people, right? I get to hang out and meet some of the most interesting people. Not always the good guys, but it's just really, really broad set of people. I get to ask a lot of questions and learn a lot of things. And so that really, I think, was what kept me engaged. And so I ended up spending, I think I was in Ukraine for close to 18 months in total. Most of the first year of the war and then most of the second year. I was pretty much all along the front. I was in Kherson for the liberation. I was in Bakhmut for the battle. I think I left. I think I'm not sure if was the last journalist in, but if not, probably I mean, there's basically no one left. It was me, and I was with a sniper team embedded, and so I was there pretty much right to the end. And so then all across Kharkiv, just the entire front. And then that got a lot more difficult. The drones just made it really, really, really hard to access the front. Really hard slash just extremely dangerous. Before that, you could kind of go and it would be artillery and whatnot, but with the drones, it just kind of really changed the picture pretty significantly. And so I ended up I was in Georgia for the protests there. I went back and then I got arrested and deported. So I annoyed someone in Georgia, I guess. So I'm officially banned from Georgia. And I did Syria and Turkey for the major earthquake. So I spent a week there. Actually, I'm going back to Syria in December. So I'm actually really, really looking forward to that. Lebanon and Syria. And then Afghanistan came around really randomly. I met a friend who was like, oh, and I don't even remember how the topic came up, but he was like, oh, my brother lives in Afghanistan. I'm like, oh shit, I've always wanted to go. And so he just kind of connected it. His brother is half American, half Afghani. And he used to do a lot of work for the US government, actually. So he used to do contracting work for the US government. And he stayed after the US or the coalition, I guess, left. And so he's super well connected, knows lots of people. And so he kind of helped me set everything up. And so now, I mean, the economic situation in Afghanistan is just extremely difficult for everyone. And so it's kind of there's lots of people that kind of jump in on like helping and assisting. And so, um, the first trip, and I'll show you pictures from the first trip in a second here. The first trip was last year. So I just got randomly connected. I spent 3 weeks kind of touring the country. At that point, it was more of a travel photography slash see what's going on type deal. And so I started in Kabul, and then I was there total for I think 24 days the first trip. And so went Kabul, drove down to Ghazni, which by the way, like under the old government, and by the way, old government, new government, that's just the terminology. So I'm just referring it that way. If anyone minds, just let me know. But under the old government, you would have basically gotten shot at within the first 30 minutes. So like it used to be completely impassable. And so I got to Ghazni and I saw all the old ruins. There's a lot of Soviet tanks still kind of all over the place. Ironically, there's way more Soviet hardware left than American. So the Americans kind of always took their stuff out. The Soviets didn't. And so it was quite fascinating. So I was at that site and it was kind of a guard slash minder. Most of these places you're not really allowed to just wander around by yourself as a foreigner. And so I had this guard slash minder. I don't think he was Taliban, but he was a government employee. And so he was like super excited that tourists were finally coming back. And he was like, and this was, I think, in November or something like that. So it was late in the year. And he was like, oh my God, you're the 149th tourist this year. It's great. And I'm like, wait, 149 people in a year? That's great. It's like, well, last year was 60, the year before that was 20, and before that, for the last 15 years, it was zero, right? And so it was pretty early. It had just kind of, and again, I don't know if we'd call it reopened per se, but it's accessible again. Surprisingly, also for Americans, I think there's a little bit of extra risk, but it doesn't seem like the people have this enormous grudge that you would kind of expect them to have. But anyways, it was kind of this I don't know. So yeah, it's pretty open now. I'm Swiss, so I'm on a Swiss passport, which is really helpful. So you just go to the embassy and you can basically go. And so end up doing that on the first trip. And then let me just show you. So wait, see what is here we go. So these are just again, these are more like street, like just regular travel tourist pictures. And so one of the things that really stood out to me is that the people are basically not allowed to wear Western clothes. And so that's terrible for them. But as a photographer, really helpful because there's not that many places in the world where you go and everyone wears local clothes all the time. And so for me, that was very, very interesting, just kind of see, and it feels just this really local situation. And so, yeah, so I drove Ghazni, then down to Kandahar, Helmand, Herat, flew back to Kabul, and then drove up into the mountains. So I saw pretty much, a fair bit of the country. Sorry, my light just died. Yeah, you can still see me, right? Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. And so, yeah, so we were kind of all over the place. And let me show you here. So these are a couple more pictures. The top left one is the bird market in Kabul. And then the picture on the right, so this guy was guarding the Blue Mosque in Herat. So very famous mosque, and he was guarding it. And so he's Taliban. He would have been fighting the Russians. So not this, he's old enough to be from the last war where he would have been active. And so I took his picture. I asked, and people always ask me, like, do you ask? And it's like, well, in this situation, yes. And so kind of this
Wait,
picture was like,
Stefan,
oh,
one question. Were you wearing the local garb as well? Robert had that good
yeah,
question.
totally. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
I
blended
go
in
all local,
as much as you
100%.
could.
Yeah, that's always the move. You can get local clothes custom made for like $30. So it's super cheap. So whatever I got there, I'd had like 3 sets made. Same for this trip. So I like it makes a big difference. I think it like people like kind of seeing it's like, oh, it's kind of weird, right? But the other interesting thing is actually, and I didn't realize that, but I can blend in. Like I'm pretty light skinned, but the Afghani population is crazy diverse. I mean, there's people that have red hairs and freckles. There is people that have much darker skin. There's everything. So as long as I don't talk, I can get by as a local. So I was really surprised by that. I really thought it was going to be much more difficult. And so, yeah, no, that was actually surprising. And so, especially in the car, it's really, really helpful because there's lots of checkpoints everywhere and they're very nice about it, but like it's just delays and delays and delays, right? Because they have to explain and look at passports and it's like a whole thing. And so the trick ended up being just not to say anything. And you can't not say anything, but if you kind of like mumble, They don't realize you don't speak the language, and they generally wave you through. So it was kind of interesting to see just like I could actually get by as a local. So I was really surprised by that. That made the road trip part a lot easier because it was really quite difficult otherwise because we just get stopped a lot. There's a lot of checkpoints everywhere, and um, so yeah, picture on the right. And so I don't know, that picture kind of stuck with me. I was like, this is pretty cool. It was interesting. He had kind of the perfect setup with the gun. He's got the old Casio watch and the shoes, right? So it just and so the clothes plus the faces. And just for me, the other thing that was really interesting is these are the people that kind of stayed, right? Now, and a lot of them didn't have a choice, right? To be sure, like it's not like they stayed because they necessarily wanted to. Some of them did, of course, but these are the people that kind of stayed behind, and a lot of people left. Like basically anyone with money left, and the economy is terrible, right? And so it's kind of this story of the people that stayed slash kind of got left behind and how they're dealing with it.
Hmm.
And I found especially a lot of I mean, they were super friendly to me. The hospitality was great. They would always make food and tea. And so it was kind of, and this, I've had this experience in quite a few countries that when they're very poor, they still tend to be extremely hospitable. And so this was definitely the case for Afghanistan. And I did less of that. I would get invited by Taliban members pretty frequently. And I generally avoid that just because it's like more of a, like hospitality is very tricky. Like you have to make sure to not violate it, which sounds easy, but sometimes isn't. And so I've always kind of been the more conservative approach. But yeah, I mean, I got invited by all kinds of people. It was fascinating. Many of them don't speak English, some of them do, and so lots of interesting conversations. Obviously, the situation for the women is not great at all. There's very few of them on the street. The picture on the top left is one of the very few images that I got of women in both trips. On the second trip, I was explicitly not allowed to take pictures of women, but also I didn't talk to a single woman because it just doesn't really work that way in the entire trip, right? So it was kind of one of those like very difficult situations. Go ahead.
What year is this, Stefan?
This one was this year, so the ones I'm about to show you this year, and the other ones are I think
No,
November
no, these images here.
23. These are November 23, October, November
Okay.
23.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So also under the new government. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, one of the major reasons I was able to go is because I never went with the coalition. And so there's definitely they asked some questions when I came in first, like, did you go to Afghanistan under like the last government? And so that was definitely a big reason that I was able to go. I just hadn't been. And so I think a lot of other people have a harder time to go because if they've been there under the last government, it's much more difficult to access now.
Okay. Go.
And so yeah, that was kind of the background. And so I really wanted to go back and get more pictures. And I was on another photography trip actually, and I forgot what the inspiration like really was. But so I wanted to do much more of a portrait style series because to me, again, the faces and the clothes and the people were so interesting. Where a lot of the shots I got are more street, right? There's always more busy distractions. And so I really wanted to go back and see, like, no, I want to get portraits of the people and get more of just the individual story. And so I was with Sandro actually, who helped me with all the lighting and everything. And so I was with him. It's like, why don't I just do a proper like portrait studio based series? And I'm sure somebody's done studio work, right, in Afghanistan, but probably not recently and not with most of the equipment you need. And so, yeah, that was kind of the inspiration. So I went back, I started planning, I think Feb 25 and ended up going in June. So it took quite a few months. It was really confusing. There was no like, and so I tried getting permits. I tried getting a press card, which that turned out to be a mistake. Basically, we went to, and the government. So there's a fully functioning government. The country functions in the sense that there's services, there's police, there's immigration, right? There's government offices. And so you can go to the government, and I did, and they were surprisingly quite helpful in the sense that they really try. So there's no crazy waits. They do really seem to try. I think they're trying to attract foreigners to come in just in general. And so, yeah, I went, or sorry, my fixers went in. And so we were trying to figure out,
Gotcha.
do I need a media visa or do I need a tourist visa, right? Because pictures, so right now there's still a lot of questions. Are pictures legal? Because
And
there,
Stefan, you had a team with you, or there's two or three of you, and move some of the images as you go. But
yeah,
like you
yeah,
have
perfect.
a fixer or two with you.
Oh, I have like eight. Like it's
Really?
Afghanistan, so you kind of like show up with like a whole crew, really. Wait, so so anyways, let me give you a second, and I'll skip to the
Okay.
group. I have pictures of everyone too, and so yeah, ended up getting permits. Well, ended up getting a letter saying that I don't need a permit, which was took like 3 months worth of like people going to government offices to figure that out. So it was a bit tricky. But so ended up going as a tourist. And yeah, so landed there, brought lots of equipment with me and brought the equipment, brought a printer, and I just worked with local guys. And so yeah, there's a couple guys that helped organize the higher level picture. And then we had like 7, 8 people that were kind of hanging out with us. So let me quickly, wait, here we go. And so basically what we would do, we would go build studios in all kinds of interesting situations. So the idea was I wanted to go to where the people would actually be that I wanted to take pictures of. And the people are both civilians as well as Taliban. And so we were basically trying to find interesting areas where the people would be, where we could set up a studio and take kind of studio lit pictures. And so this was the first location. This took us, I think, 4 days to organize. It was a bit tricky. So this is a cow market. So there's a holiday for Muslims called Eid. And on Eid, they go buy either a cow or a sheep and they sacrifice it and they give the meat to the poor. So that's basically the holiday. Now, in the major cities like Kabul, they have to go buy an animal because they don't have a farm. And so this was one of those markets. And so our thesis was, hey, everyone will be there. Rich people come to buy an animal, poor people come to buy an animal, farmers, right? Everyone's there. And so we went there. I rented a cow stall. So this was the stall that was supposed to be rented to a farmer to sell his cows. I got, we rented one and we set up kind of this tent. And let me, wait, why does this keep up? And so this is the setup. That's Ramin, one of my fixers. And so, yeah, it's very simple setup. So background on 2 tripods. Camera is a Fuji GFX 102, and everything was shot on the 80 millimeter lens at either f8 or at f11. And then yeah, one light, one scrim, and my laptop tethered to the whole thing. So that was kind of the photography related setup. I had that chest just so people could sit on something. So I have some standing, some sitting shots. But that was really kind of the setup. And so I would bring people into the studio, we would set them up, and one of the tricky bits was so okay, so under the last government, pictures were basically completely non-existent. So if you got married and you were Taliban, you would definitely not have a picture of your wedding. And you would literally just have no pictures of anything, right? So pictures were very much a thing that didn't really exist before. Now it's more so because not their war isn't happening anymore, so they're a bit less worried about having kind of a digital footprint, but some of them still are quite worried. And also for the people, there's a lot more cell phones now, right? So that kind of combination kind of came together. But I don't like there's not many people with like DSLRs. That's not a super common thing. And there's like people don't go to a studio to have a picture taken, basically. And so it was a really interesting experience, kind of convincing people to come take a picture. And I brought a printer as well. And so everyone that came in, I would print a picture for. And so one of the challenges was that everyone came in, right? Like I would stand outside of the tent and like tell my fixers, go get that guy. He looks really interesting, right? And so they would run off and try to convince the guy who had like a little book printed to come take a picture. That
And
worked really.
did you pay them? Did you have to pay them any like
No,
a little
no,
bit
no,
of
no,
money?
no. That would have likely just horrifically backfired because so
Okay.
even with the picture, right? Because I would give them the picture and people were really excited about some people were really excited, some people were really confused, some people were really not excited, right? So it was a bit of a mix. I would say about 40% of people would say yes generally, which was, I mean, that's probably as good as you'd get in New York, right? So about 40% of people would say yes. And they would come in, but they would always like bring their 3 friends, right? And so it was always like one really interesting looking guy, and then I'd have to shoot his 3 friends as well. So it was kind of one of those. But yeah, I mean, we had sheep, we had cows, we had all kinds of stuff in our tent, and so it ended up being really fun, really interesting. Most of the people were really helpful, really friendly, and we did give them water. That's the one thing we did give them. I think if we'd given them money, the line would have been enormous and it would have caused way more problems than it would have actually helped. Because so in the beginning, I was doing 70, 80 people a day, which was way too much. My back was just absolutely crippled after like 5 or 6 days of just lifting stuff around. And so I started slowing down and being a little more selective, and that ended up being the better cadence. So I had kind of like a good baseline. And so anyway, so that this is the studio. And so these are the type of pictures that I got. So this guy was from and by the way, I have names, date of birth, sorry, not date of birth, name, age, and where they are from for everyone. And I was not allowed to interview them. That was one of the rules of like my kind of like permit letter. But so yeah, that was kind of the setup there. Oh yeah, I forgot. So pictures were even now there's a question if you drive through Kabul, a lot of like if you see like a poster for an ad at the side of the street, their faces will be scratched out. And so there's part of the Taliban and the government that believe that pictures are haram, which means illegal under the religion. And so that pictures are illegal entirely. And so, and I'll show you some pictures of the religious police in a bit here. But so getting a permit to take pictures is kind of tricky because again, it's still like in this kind of legal gray area, interestingly. And so,
And
anyways,
Stefan, so that studio that you set up, you stayed in there for 4 or 5 days,
no, usually we would do 2 or 3 days in the same
and
location.
then
We'd
go.
break it down, we'd move it somewhere else. Yeah, we were at quite a few different locations. I'll show you. I have different videos from the different locations, so I'll show you some of the weirder ones we were at. There's
Okay.
some odd stuff in there. But yeah, so this guy, he didn't want to sit for me with his face because so he's Taliban from and by the way, you can tell who's Taliban like with a little bit of practice by what they generally wear. So there's like a kind of, and he's actually not wearing a typical Taliban outfit, but he was from the Pakistani Afghani border, which is where there's war again now. So that conflict kind of got hot again now. But so he was from down there, and he just didn't want to sit he didn't want to sit with his face showing, and so I ended up talking him into this. And so it's one of my favorite pictures. Like the scarf was just the perfect texture and everything. So it came out quite interesting. So I do really like this one. This guy was a cleric. I think, so he's Pashtun. I think he's Taliban, and he was a cleric. So he came also at the animal market to buy an animal. And so he came through. This was actually at a bus stop. So that's one of the later locations. He just had the most interesting face. And so again, for a lot of these guys, I would just pick them out on the street and I would just say, hey, you please come take a picture. And not me, right? We'd have to have fixers and there's translating involved and all that. Um, one of the difficulties is like usually in most countries, you can just use Google Translate. That's really, really difficult in Afghanistan, A, because they speak a whole bunch of different languages and B, because 60% of the country cannot read. And so you can't really show them, like usually you just translate and you show them the text, right? That doesn't really work for Afghanistan. So that really made the situation a lot more tricky, kind of just communicating. But yeah, it was, and then suddenly you end up meeting this random person who just spoke just flawless English and like American accent and everything. So it was this really odd mix from great English to none at all, with most people trending onto the none at all side of things. This guy was really interesting. So he was a suicide bomber. He got trained as a kid in one of the madrasas as a suicide bomber, and the war ended before he got his assignment. And so now he became a kind of mid-level government bureaucrat. He's very well respected. I think being like in that kind of from that background, and by the way, I met probably 20 suicide bombers. There's a lot of them. And so they were
And
training quite a
Stefan,
lot.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. How do you find out that this guy was a suicide bomber? And do you, in this process, do you feel threatened yourself? I mean, give us a little sense of that as you go through them.
Yeah, so he would, I mean, people just knew. It's really interesting. Like there's a lot of kind of like social cues that I completely missed, but my fixers would then tell me the stories afterwards. And so, but so so he was trained as a suicide bomber, and then the war ended, and so and so I guess he got assigned, and so he was my security guard for 4 days. So ironically, he was the government employee that was assigned to the market, and they wanted to make sure that for them, again, they're really trying to get tourism, and this very it's very tricky to describe, right? There's these upsides. It's gotten safe in the sense that if you don't offend anyone, then you're okay, right? So there's no more shootings. It's or not no more, but it's very rare now. But it's kind of like, and so they basically had he was there, and so they kind of assigned him to me. He actually ended up taking us to his village a week later because he wanted to show us his village, and so it's this really fascinating. I mean, I think he's 23 now or something. His village was right south of Bagram. And so he was showing us his village and like all the stuff where all the crazy fighting was happening. And so yeah, he just kind of missed the timing, I guess.
So someone like this is just the type of person they don't want you to talk to, right?
No,
Because
no, 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 they would be very proud of him. No, yeah, that's like
no, but
he
I'm
was
talking about the
fighting.
restrictions. I'm talking about the restrictions you had with certain people, like when you had to do your paperwork. They said do this, don't do that. Is that part of the reason of him being a suicide bomber and giving too much information out? What could you?
No, no, not. What they didn't want is me doing like interviews, right?
Mm,
Because then it's more like if I had done like, and you'll see later, there's generals in here, there's like senior government officials in the pictures. He's more of, I would say, a mid-level government official. And so
okay.
I think it was more of a don't turn this into a political like research piece slash statement, right? And so I think like, and I kind of shot the people more as the people, right? I could have lit them much darker, much scarier, and I kind of purposely wanted to kind of present them more as they were in person, without kind of taking the political angle, both from the photography and also from the explanation. I think the explanations are really interesting, the stories that go with it, right? But so no, I think they would just talk to us, right? Like it wasn't a sit down interview 30 minutes type thing. And so that I think, and again, the rules were not super, like it's not like there's an 80-page like rule book, right? It just kind of said don't do this, right? And so what that line is a little bit tricky, but given that he was a government employee and he was telling us, it's kind of is what it is. Also really interesting, he's the only person in the entire series that I got with a gun. Not a single other person would sit for me with a gun because, and I tried. And whenever I asked, they would be like, no, 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 guns were for war. War was before. Now it's peace. No more guns. So he's the only one who would sit for me with a gun. So I was really surprised by that. I really thought it was going to be much more difficult to get people to sit for me. And I thought that everyone who had a gun, would want the gun in the picture. But that just turned out to not be the case at all. So that was completely different from what I'd expected. And I didn't push very hard, right? But guns tend to look good in pictures, right? So it's kind of more of a this is kind of interesting. But yeah, so that they were across the board not cool with doing that, which I thought was kind of an interesting. I don't know, just how that's shifted.
And how long are they sitting with you? You can move on. How long are
Uh,
they sitting with you?
That was a whole deal. So most of them were very impatient. It would be like I would take the first picture. And so generally I would try to get a picture as they were sitting down and getting situated, as they were still very relaxed. You can see most of these guys will look very formal in a sense. Like they want to present themselves well. This might be the first picture that anyone's ever taken of them, right? Because for many of them, they don't have phones. They live on the farms, right? So very possibly no one's ever taken a picture for them. And so many of them, I think one of the things that was really common is that they would say, "Oh, my grandfather." We had one picture of my grandfather from 60 years ago and hang above the fireplace, right? And so they kind of saw it more as that's what they were getting, versus
Mhm.
like in the West, it's like a snapshot, right? You've taken a zillion pictures. This is not a big deal, right? So for them, it was much more of a is more of a cultural experience, kind of like it was like a big deal. And so ironically, that meant they were very serious. I have some not serious pictures that I'll show them to you later, but they were generally very serious, and they would not sit more. I mean, after 4 or 5 pictures, they were like, "What are you doing? Like, why is this taking so long? Why are you?" And there's a flash, right? So they know when I'm taking a picture. It's not like I'm shooting a DSLR and I can just like crank through 100 pictures without them knowing. Like, there's a flash in the cycle time, and the flash was on battery because I had no power, right? And so they knew how much I was taking, and so some I would say the people who sat the longest, maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, right? So this was not a Oh, by the way, no one has any makeup that I did. These are the exact clothes that they were wearing on the street. So there's no one being made up, nothing like that. They would come in, they would sit down. I would take 3, 4 pictures. I would print a picture and they would leave. So it was this very quick turnover, which also was helpful on my side, right? Because I just got a lot, like a good volume. But yeah, so nothing is staged. Everything is exactly, and you'll see some people wear eyeliner, and I'll get back to it later. But and for them, yeah. But so these are very quick. I think he sat for me twice because he was at our tent twice, and he wanted to wear black for the second time. So that rarely happened, but it did happen. This was one of the farmers. This is also at the animal market. So he was trying to sell that goat. That was the goat he was most proud of. So he brought this one. Um, the goat was not happy about having a picture taken, so it was a bit of a wrestling match getting him into position. That was pretty exciting. Um, oh yeah, so that's the getting Cal into the studio. I don't know if you guys can hear the background, but the cow was not happy, and so they were telling us it's the meanest cow that they had, but they really liked it. So, anyways, so there was, and so this is the wait. Let me just pause this for a second. Oh no, so sorry. So this is the studio in Kabul, just to kind of get an idea of the market. There was a crazy sandstorm, and I got a good video of it. And so it was not this windy or this crazy for nearly the entire time. It was just this little bit, but just so you can see the market itself, how we would set up. And so all those two guys were fixers. And so I think we had about 7 fixers with us at most time. So all these were our guys, and they were just watching things not to tip over and all that.
I love the fact that you call it the studio.
Let's see.
So, Stefan, so by now you're there for a day or two. By now everyone knows that you're there.
Yeah, so people would come specifically to have their picture taken. So we were there 2, 3 days, and at the end, which actually was really fun. Like, so at the end, like I'd taken pictures of so many of the farmers and the vendors and all that. They when you would walk around the market, people would have their picture like pinned to like a post or something, and so they were just kind of all over the market. I think I must have shot probably 200. I shot and printed 200 pictures for the people on the market, right? And so they were all over the place. So people would then start asking, and they would come specifically to have their picture taken, which that's part of the reason why we didn't stay longer, because that became more of an issue. Because I mean, again, like sometimes like you'd have 15 people show up, right? And then that's an hour's worth of work. And printer ink was a whole separate thing. But so yeah, that was actually kind of becoming a minor problem at some point. So these are the guys with a printer. It was this like super little transportable printer because I needed something that would run on battery, and that really limits your options. And so, anyways, so that was that. This guy was a witch doctor. So we went out into one of the villages. He uses, it was kind of interesting. He uses both religion, as in Islam, and like snake and scorpion poisons in order to cure people from cancer and other diseases. I mean, that's I guess their theory at least. So that's a scorpion, and it's a real scorpion. So he had scorpions, he had snakes, he had everything. He kind of brought them out for us. So it was a pretty exciting day. All the fixers wanted to have pictures taken with the snakes, and so we have a bunch of interesting ones. And so he's wearing eyeshadow, but that's his daily outfit. It's called kohl, and so they wear that actually quite frequently, more frequently than you'd think. So yeah, that was a fun one. Wait, I think I have a video. So
And
this one I actually shot outside without a tent. It didn't work super well. It was a little bit tricky with the lighting. We were under these trees. But so this is the one time I didn't have a tent, and it was okay, but it would have been too much of a hassle to get a tent there. And so the good news is we were able to get a donkey in front of the thing. And so out on the farm in the field, and so so yeah, that was the
so Stefan, as you're doing this, this is working out pretty well, right? I mean, as you're into it for a week or 2 weeks, This is it going better than you expected, or you had a good feeling about this?
I had a slower start than I was hoping. The first 4 or 5, it took a lot longer to get the permits than I was hoping.
Mm.
But that's kind of just like that. Like what if you ever done like I mean, you've any trip like this, it's always tricky in the first few days because you kind of get to know people, all that stuff. So the first few days were not as productive. But then we had some days that I got like 10 pictures where I'm like, oh wow, that was really good. And then we'd have days where I'd work 12 hours and it's hot and I was sick. I got Giardia, which was not great. So that combo of hot, sick, and then 12 hours of taking pictures, and you're not getting anything good, like that was not great. So that was definitely more of there's some less good days, but I mean, it did end up being pretty productive. So it was just really variable. Some days were amazing, some days were a lot less productive. So it was a big mix, I'd say.
And once you had your setup running, it really was smooth. I mean, from a production standpoint, did you change your lighting often?
No, you'll see. I mean, there's one that I mean, so yes, I would have to move it around pretty frequently because I'd want somebody sitting up, sitting, somebody standing, I'd have a goat, right? And then everything moves, right? So, but honestly, it wasn't too bad. I think I had like kind of like little, I knew what was going where. I did one like formula the whole time, right? I didn't do any crazy stuff. I had a single light, so that made it a lot easier. And then again, no one had any patience. Like I could move a light once, but then if I did that more than once, like people would start leaving, right? So it was kind of like a no, you just kind of gotta just get as good as possible and then kind of like roll with it. So that there was definitely a fair amount of just no, it just kind of is what it is, and it didn't always work out perfectly, but then some of the not so perfect shots still really good.
And is there any significance to the headgear that people are wearing or the colors that they wear? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so
Thank you,
the
Pat.
hat the hats generally, so okay, there's some that are more generic. There are some that are region specific. For example, the one he's wearing right here, that's more from the mountainous areas. And by the way, again, I'm not like a super expert on this, so this is like probably pretty close to correct, but there's so many different ones. And so, for example, if they wear a black scarf, that's generally people from the south. And then their beard style would tell you a lot. And so generally black beard plus black scarf means probably Taliban. And there's, I think, air quotes, only about 100,000 Taliban members. And it's interesting, they issue IDs now. So there's an official ID for members of the Taliban now. And so it's just kind of like, and before, obviously, they just knew each other, right? But so they're the clothes, like definitely identify them. There's also a lot of ethnic diversity. Like you'll have Tajiks, you'll have Uzbeks, you'll have Pashtuns, you'll have people from like the Pakistani side, and they look very distinctly different, and they also dress distinctly different. So I think there's a like Pete, and again, I got better at it towards the end, but my fixers would be able to look at someone and say, "Oh yeah, he's probably from that area," and they would like usually be right. So the outfit is definitely very, and so in Afghanistan, tribes are incredibly important. So most, and maybe this might be an exaggeration, but for most Afghanis, they are a member of a tribe more so than like that you would say you're a New Yorker, not an American, right? They would say they're Pashtun, not Afghani. And so it's kind of this like the tribe is very, very, very critical for them, especially in a country where there's basically, I mean, there's no social services, right? If you don't have food and your tribe doesn't give you any, like you just don't have food, right? There's no government services, nothing like that. And so the family and the tribe is really, really critical for them. And so the clothes definitely help you or help them, I guess, identify each other. And also the language, there's so many different languages. Like I would have different fixers that would speak different languages because otherwise, like, I mean, it would just all the time be the wrong language. So we would have different fixers from different backgrounds that would speak the different languages. And especially in Kabul, it'd be a mix, right? So you kind of needed multiple of them in order to have that language handy. And they don't speak each other's language usually either, right? So the Pashtun, they speak their language, and then the Dari speakers speak Dari, right? So it's not like there's no overlap either. So Dari speakers don't understand Pashtun most of the time. So it's not like whatever American English and but British English, it's like full on totally separate languages. So it's really interesting how diverse the both language and the people really are.
And is there sort of a social ladder, where these people are thought of as the lower end, these are the higher end, these are the more educated end? Is that something that's prevalent?
So there's a lot of stereotypes that I have no idea how many of them are true right now because the Taliban are
And go
Pashtun.
to the next
So
slide, Stefan.
oh yeah. So not these are the guys. So on the right side, this is the suicide bomber from earlier. So he was our security guard for this as well. And by the way, the food was amazing. I love the food, and you would just eat out. It was excellent. The bread was delicious, and so everywhere we went, pretty much somebody would frequently make food for us. So the food was there. The hospitality, I mean, there's a very very big part of their culture. And so then we went to the amusement park. So this is another kind of ironic thing. Kabul has one major amusement park. This is it. This is the night shot, obviously. And so we went there and set up our tent. I think you might be able to see it right down here. I think this is our no right, this hut right there. That's where our tent was. So right there in the middle. And so we went there, we set up, and part of the reason was it's quite interesting. So because the war was happening, most of the members of the Taliban, they were growing up in literally caves, in farms, right, hiding and fighting, obviously. And so many of them, because I mean the war was going for what, 20 some years. So a lot of the, especially younger ones, had grown up without ever having done anything like going to an amusement park. And so now it is actually a very popular attraction for many of them to come do this type of stuff. And so it was this very kind of surreal experience where it's an amusement park that's, I would say, 70% Taliban members. And so we kind of went, because we knew there'd be a lot of interesting faces. And so, yeah, we set up our tent there. We got permit from the owner of the park, who's the owner of the park used to be a member of parliament in the last government. And so that was quite interesting. We got to have dinner with them. So there, again, that dynamic of last government, current government was pretty fascinating. And it was so complex. I still have at most like a vague understanding of the political situation. But anyway, so
And,
this was the amusement park. Oh, go ahead.
and women and children allowed in that amusement park?
Uh, Girls under a certain age, yes. Women, no. So they were under the last government, not under current government. So there's a lot like public parks. So they are not allowed to go to those things. Yeah. And so it would generally be the men with their kids and daughters, and it would nearly always be relatively large families. So it'd usually be five, six, seven people that would be going together. But yeah, it was nearly all just men
And
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 boys and girls.
and an amusement park similar to the ones in the West? I'm like, if you were dropped in there, would you know you're in Afghanistan, or could you be in, Wyoming?
No, no. I mean, I'll show you. I rode one of the roller coasters. Um,
Okay.
no, I mean, I don't know if you've been to amusement park in Mexico. There's definitely a big gap on like safety features and just
That
the
I'm sure.
basicness of the ride, right? So
Yeah.
in a sense that there's rides and that there's no music allowed, so there's no music. So the whole country there's no music. So there's rides, there is people running around laughing, right? It's kind of what you would expect. It's a much poorer country. So I think the quality comes through on just it's a poor country. But besides that, I mean, you could tell, like you
Right.
would know that you're not in the US for sure.
Right.
Just clothes, everything. But I mean, I
Yeah.
think from a behavior wise, no, people come to picnic. And so
Okay.
a lot of people, it's interesting, you're allowed to stay overnight. I mean, they just sleep outside. But so they would come bring a picnic, they would do the amusement park, and they would just sleep outside, and then they would leave the next day. So even late at night, it was very, very busy, and they would bring food and all that. And so it's definitely a different experience, but yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting.
And anything that you saw there that was really similar, whether it's popcorn or whatever it may be, anything that says, "Wow, that's just like us." Like
I
one
mean,
thing,
yeah. I think it's interesting. The kids would always drag their parents to the rides, so it was kind of like, oh, let's go do this ride next. So it was kind of interesting. There's quite a few times I saw that. I was like, wow, yeah, that's the same thing, kind of.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. All right, so these two guys. So I put them side by side. So the guy on the left here, he used to be a general in the army in the last government, and the guy on the right, he's one of the senior Taliban members he's in charge of, I think, the northern part of Kabul, the area by the airport. So it's kind of interesting. Left side, he used to control the army. Right side is the new guy who controls the army, or at least parts of it, right? So it's just like quite interesting. But even then, you can see the pose is similar.
Yeah.
They both have. I don't think it's called a rosary for them. I don't actually know the right word, but they have
Well,
whatever.
30
What
beats.
I guess. Yeah,
You,
they're prayer beads. Yeah, they're
right.
prayer beads. I think that's
Yeah.
it. That's a better word. And so that was also very, very common. A lot of people would
Yeah.
want to be depicted with them. So it was quite interesting how many people like had them out. And but again, I wouldn't tell them to do any of this. They just kind of started doing it. I would sometimes like pivot them a little and turn them around a little bit, that type of stuff. But besides that, this is kind of what they were. But I don't know. I thought this was interesting. And on the right side, he just kind of looks like I don't know. He's kind of a dude you wouldn't really want to mess with. So it was kind of fat. Oh, and so a lot of that too, and it was quite interesting. A lot of the government role assignments, um, when the war ended and when they started, right? Because they had some people who were running different, I guess not government functions, right? But they were administering the areas that they had control over, right? But suddenly they needed a lot more people. And so a lot of the people that got promoted into those roles were just the top fighters, right? The top commanders of whatever units would suddenly become head of education, right? So it was kind of interesting how they had to do that. And just, and again, I don't think it's necessarily going extremely well, but just the fact that to me, and I think a lot of people in the West, they kind of assume when the US left that just everything completely stopped functioning, right? But I mean, it didn't. The government, again, maybe works is a bit of an exaggeration, right? But everything is getting done, right? The power still runs, the cell phone still, I had great cell phone reception the entire time. I used my US SIM card. And so like those basic things, the power is problematic, and there's many, many issues that are more like poverty related. But again, things are continuing to happen. So I don't know. I really found it interesting, and I found it interesting too that the guy on the left, right, like they didn't find him and execute him. Like he used to run the army, and so I think there's a lot of stories around who was getting tracked down. And so the fact that he would sit for a picture and be in Kabul, and again, I don't know his exact background. He was telling us, he was showing us pictures. He had pictures with Ashraf Ghani. He had pictures with many like US generals too. And so it was kind of interesting to me that he would show that to us, right? So it was kind of more of a, I don't know. Again, I kind of wasn't, I would have not expected that because especially if there's so many stories. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Stefan, would that be something that's indicative of the Afghan people? Like that was the war that was brought to them from the West, and now the air is out of that balloon, and we go back to who we were, and let those other things, like you say, this guy may have had a checkered past, but it's over now. Is that like sort of a quality of them, of the Afghan people as human beings? Like you let it go, no retribution.
Um, No, no, there was definitely some retribution. I think there definitely was, but from what I was told, and again, I have really no way to truly verify this, but a lot of it was much more personal. Like,
Mm,
you messed with me under the last government, I'm gonna come back at you, right? It wasn't as much of a like it wasn't a like super organized thing. Again,
mm,
like, and there's a lot of stories to contradict that. So, and I have no way to
yeah.
tell what the actual ratios are. But again, to me, the fact that the guy who ran the army or part of the army didn't get tracked down and that he would tell us that that's right, that he's not somewhere hiding in a cave, I did not expect, right? And so again, I have no real way to tell. And this wasn't the kind of trip to try to figure that out, right? It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
more
I
of a
get
let
it.
me go take pictures. But yeah, I mean, still, I found it just kind of interesting that that even could occur. Yeah.
No, go.
This guy was interesting. He was telling me about the king. From like I think he was okay, ages are really tricky. Some people I would ask for their, or my fixers would ask for their age, and they would say they're like 14 when they looked like they were 40. And some people would say kind of inverse. It was very hard to tell. And we have written down what they told us, but there's definitely a lot of people who don't know how old they are. He said, I think he was 102, if I recall correctly. And so he remembered the king. And so the king was in like the 40s, right? So he remembered the Brits leaving and the king, and so the whole thing. So it was quite fascinating to have him. And so yeah,
Well,
that was interesting.
that's something that's universal, right? Everyone always lies about their age.
No, no, I think they just don't know.
All
I
right,
think
no,
they
I get
don't
it.
track it as much. I think it's less. I don't think he was lying. I think like, and I think he knew his age. But there's this one guy, and like he took a picture, and my pictures were like, he says he's like 18, and they're like, oh man, like like he looks like he's in his late 40s, right? And so it was just there's just this, and so we kind of didn't know which one it was. Did he not know his age, or did he just was he just looking a lot older? But it was kind of interesting. Um, this guy was interesting. He's Taliban, obviously, so he's wearing the black with the black beard. And so this was the amusement park. And again, this is the outfit he was wearing. So he showed up like this. So it was helpful for me. But yeah, quite fascinating. So that wrinkly scarf material, definitely from the south. So he's from probably the Kandahar area, and the Taliban wear it a lot because there's a lot of Taliban who are from the south. So there's definitely a lot of overlap there. And he wanted his sunglasses on.
And
Sorry, did you say that?
did anyone speak English at all, Stefan, of the people who were
Some of
sitting?
them spoke excellent
Oh,
English.
is that
I
right?
met
Okay.
one guy. He was I don't think I have a picture of him in this series. He was a mid-level Taliban commander, both under well, he was fighting and now he's not, but he was on the PR side, interestingly. So they have PR teams. And so
Mm.
he spoke excellent English. And so one of the things it was quite interesting. He was excellent English, same they and it's just kind of odd. They are definitely trying to be friendly. And again, it's this kind of odd scenario if you're like, well, they are friendly, polite, and inviting, but at the same time, it's kind of this like, oh, but if you say the wrong thing, how quickly does that change? And so I luckily did not find out, but it's definitely one of those where it's like, but they very clearly have orders from the government to treat foreigners well. So there's very clearly they are not allowed to mess with you. So it's not like they could just mess with me and get away with it. Definitely not. Like they would get into big trouble because there definitely is a strict rule to not do that. So it was kind of interesting that they're very conscious that they're trying to improve their reputation. I'm not sure if it's because they want tourism or because they just want, for them, sanctions relief is really critical. I mean, the country is really struggling. And so I don't know if it's more that they're just trying to, anyone who comes to the country should have an okay experience, right? So that maybe it helps. So I'm not sure where that comes from, but there's definitely a very clear, like, now I'm sure that won't be true everywhere. The government doesn't always have perfect control over all the areas, that type of stuff. But I was surprised as to how much of a top-down effort there seemed to be to make sure that nothing happened.
And Stefan, do you think that's sort of our preconceived idea of these folks? Like in any place that you go and you travel, in these war-torn areas, we go there with certain, of our own bias, for lack of a better word, and then you get there and they're just decent folks, or they're really more difficult, both sides of it. Do you think about that as it relates to you photographing, you interacting, that you have to force yourself to leave whatever your preconceived ideas were, somewhere else.
So, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, like a lot of these people that were fighting had probably done horrible things by
Right.
at least our standards, right? So I think that's certainly the case for many of these guys. And so it's less that I have to like leave something behind. It's just this very surreal experience because like when you're there and when you're not at war with them, right? And I'm sure this would have been extremely difficult 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? But for them now, it's like, well, the war is over, and so they have no problem with me being there as long as I kind of follow their rules, right? And so it's just this very surreal experience, especially, I mean, like I know a lot of people who fought in Afghanistan on the coalition side, right? And so just the contrast of the stories I know from them And then I'm sure these guys would have had the inverse stories, right? So it's just this like really, really surreal experience, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, but so no, it's definitely not they're just regular normal dudes, right? I think like, I mean, just think about it. They were fighting like this guy, what is his mid-20s probably? So he never, like, this is the first time in his entire life that there was a war in his country, right? And he was probably fighting since he was young or being trained to fight since he was young, right? So, I mean, it's just like, if you think about their experience growing up, I mean, it must have been pretty crazy, right? And so there's a lot of PTSD issues. I met a psychiatrist on my first trip that they were saying that was a huge problem for them. And so there, yeah, there's a lot of interesting. I mean, just think. I mean, if you just think through it, like it's like holy crap, like they have no. I mean, they've obviously have no mental aid support, right? They must have roughly the same problems as an American soldier had, but they were there for 20 plus years, right? Versus a tour of a year, and actually, right? So it's this really crazy. I mean, must have been this crazy upcoming, right? And so I don't know. It was always interesting, but it's very hard. I think it's one of those things that's very hard to really understand or imagine just because it's just so far off anything that I would be able to really. But and again, then you have tea with them and they tell you about their family and their kids, right? And so it's just like
Yeah.
on a one-to-one level, I've always found that people are a lot more similar than you would think. But then on a cultural level, as in whatever, if there's a group, then it gets a lot more different. And so I think I don't know, that's always kind of in my view. But again, this wasn't really meant to be a political piece, and it really isn't, right? It's more of
Yeah.
like, but
Yeah.
it's just these fascinating stories of I don't know, and this was kind of just like I don't think anyone's taking pictures of them. So it was kind of just interesting to go again.
Right.
This guy was a cleric too, I believe. So he was telling us he was, yeah, he's got this really, really interesting beard. And I think the white is frequently, I think from a certain area, but also for the clerics. Oh, a lot of them, you see how he has a pen in his vest, right? Nearly all of them that had pens wouldn't let me take the pen out. So sometimes they'd have it in this like really awkward color and it'd be like, just take the pen out. They're like, no, 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 I know how to read and write. Right. And so for them, that was definitely like a marking factor of like, hey, I know how to read and write, and I'm the kind of person who carries a pen. So a lot of people would not want me to remove the pen, and you'll see a bunch of random pens in the different series. This guy is from Pakistan, so he was quite interesting. I don't know, he's just an interesting face. This was at the amusement park.
It really is amazing. You have to pinch yourself all the time that this is in that studio that you showed us. You know, because it looks like it's, really, they're beautiful portraits. You really have to,
Thanks. Yeah. One of the things I was really surprised by, I had no problems with dust because it was crazy dusty everywhere. But these are, I think, 102 megapixel images, so maybe the dust is just too small. But yeah, I never had problem with dust, which I was super happy about because I was really worried that I was going to have a whole bunch of issues. Um, then this guy, so he's Taliban, and I got him with ice cream. So I was really happy about that. And so he realized that I got him with ice cream and he immediately gave it away to someone else. So that was a big like you can't make me look silly. And so actually that was really interesting. One of the things none of them wanted is for this to be posted on social media. And so that's why I haven't really posted much on social media. Like it's fine to have like as a promo thing, but they really wanted to make sure that that's it's kind of like also cultural that it would not be like this social media thing. And a lot of them were concerned that I would try to make them look silly or stupid. And so that was a big deal when we showed them the pictures of, hey, this is how they turn out. Because again, a lot like a studio is weird, right? They haven't seen that. And so yeah, that was one of the big concerns. Like, are you gonna Photoshop something in, right? Are you gonna edit it to make me look bad? So it was quite interesting that a lot of them were concerned about that. And obviously this isn't edited. This was just, I thought, kind of interesting. So this is the amusement park. So they have ice cream. The ice cream's delicious, by the way. They make it somehow, and it was very good. And I think that might have been what got me sick. So if you go, don't eat ice cream. The one I actually have two girls. She was the daughter of the man of the sorry, the granddaughter of the man who owned the park. So she was the granddaughter of the previous member of parliament. And so they wanted pictures. They brought their whole family. And so I have their whole family. So she was the one of the few girls that I got a picture of. And they obviously had the full outfit and everything. So that was interesting. Oh,
Oh,
okay. So this is the park. And
right.
so you see the guys in the front. So very interesting. So they're the religious police. And you can tell by the fact that they're wearing white doctors' lab coats. So weirdly enough, that's their uniform. So they walk around like that, and and so they, they enforce the religious laws. So if you were playing music and they catch you, you have a problem. If you are dating someone in public, that type of stuff, and you're not married, like these are the guys that it's their job effectively to catch that. And so I got, so I was literally just taking pictures of the park, and these guys walked into my shot, and you can see he's not looking super keen on having the picture taken. So it was a whole deal afterwards. We spent like 30 minutes arguing with them that we were allowed to do this and we had the permits, and so it was a whole thing. But yeah, I was really happy I got this picture. So just I don't know, I thought it was just this weird thing that they wear the doctor's lab coats. And the park is kind
Yeah.
of empty at this point. Actually, this was earlier in the day, so it got a lot more busy. But you can see in the background, Kabul is massive. It's about 5 million people, and it's
Well,
mostly, I think, what we considered slums in most countries. So it is very, very poor. You have to wheel, and so there's a whole bunch of rides. The park's pretty big, so it would take a fair bit of time to do all the different rides. But so yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, right? You can kind of tell it's not the Midwest, but
yeah. No, no, I
there's
get that. Just if the human
oh,
experience
sorry.
is the same. Yeah, go.
So this is me riding the roller coaster with the guys. So these are the Taliban in the background, and these are my fixers.
That's fun. That's great. Oh, that's one of those rides that go back and forth.
Correct. And it was like home built. And there was like
I
when you got
bet.
in, there was like a 2 foot gap and you would just fall down like 40 feet if you missed. So there's no seatbelts and nothing either. But so I don't know. Again, it's this super surreal moment of riding the roller coaster with the Taliban. And so I don't know. It was one of the more weird things that have happened to me. Yeah, that's and so
But
and so they had dropped off their sorry, go ahead.
no, everyone's got a big fat smile. That's universal.
Yeah, everyone likes roller coasters. They had dropped off their guns right outside, so they didn't take the guns onto the ride. So the people were not allowed to carry guns into the park, but some people did anyways somehow, and I didn't quite understood who could and who couldn't. These guys could. So they must have been a big deal of some kind because that or the security guards of somebody that was a big deal. But so yeah, it was I didn't quite again, it's one of those you don't really want to ask type situations. And I was clearly taking pictures. And so, but yeah, it was very weird. And this is the dinner afterwards. So we had dinner, the food again. The food was just excellent. So all of these guys, except for wait, no, all of these guys were my fixers, except for him and him. They were just local guys. So yeah, that was the team.
You should
And
know
yeah, they
that
were very excited.
you should
Sorry, go
know
ahead.
your friend Robert Levy just joined us.
Oh, excellent. I think I've seen most of these already, but I'm glad to have him here.
Yeah.
This guy just had a spectacular beard, so he was interesting. This guy's interesting. So he's Pakistani, um, and he's wearing the Taliban high tops. So the shoes they're called cheetahs, and so they the Taliban started wearing them when they were fighting the Russians. And so they are super popular with them. They are very difficult to get now. So he was very proud of the shoes. And so the shoes are a big deal to have those shoes. Like it's like kind of like, I don't know, I'm not very good with, but like whatever, the fanciest $1,000 Air Jordans, like this is that for them. And so they would wear those when they were in the mountains fighting. And so he actually he was the only one who did this, but he made me open the chest to check if there was a bomb in it. So he wanted to see what was in the chest before he sat down. So he was a bit more paranoid, but he had the very good hair. So um,
I mean, that's a pretty intense thing to say. right? I'm not going to sit on that until I know it's
Yeah, like I want to see what's in it. And so it was empty, so it wasn't anything exciting. But so that yeah. Yeah, this guy, this was right before we got started because he got super serious. But so yeah, this is one of the few like impromptu shots. And he was doing his beard. So and a lot of people did this actually. So a lot of people sat down and they were really getting ready. Again, kind of this. It was the picture taking was a big deal for many of them. So yeah. Ah, this is the terror of having to watch all my gear going like 60 in the back of a car without being tied down or anything. And obviously, if it falls out, you're screwed because there's no replacing it in country. So that was my one of my fixers. We had two cars, and that was one of the cars. You can see all the carpets and my giant bag full of stuff in the back. So that was always exciting. This is the bird market. So
right
this place
where
is
we saw
pretty
the
crazy.
girl, where we saw the girl 2 years ago. At the same
Correct.
market.
Same
Okay.
place. Yep, same place. So the bird market is pretty famous. I mean, honestly, it feels like when you're in there that probably it hasn't changed in 1,000 years. It's probably been there forever, and it's probably still the same houses. And so we sat up there. It was really cool actually. But so we sat up there in like I'll show you just kind of where the studio was in a second here. But I mean, it's just this most fascinating place. It's super crowded. It's super loud. Doesn't smell great all the time, but it was a pretty fascinating place to be.
Well,
Yeah, they raise pigeons. It's very popular. So that's why there's so many pigeons. And so this is the back
and that
alley for the studio.
and that's a live workspace that you just walked through.
I think everything is a live workspace. So
That's
I
what I
think they
thought.
live
Okay.
upstairs and they have the building downstairs. So I think it's a very common it's I mean still super old school, right? I mean it's just kind of how it's worked for a long
Yeah.
time. Maybe, by the way, it's surprisingly expensive. Renting the stalls is like expensive, like tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy one. Like it's
Wow.
surprisingly quite expensive. Yeah, because I kind of thought like it would be very inexpensive, but no, a lot of the prime real estate spots still super expensive. So I thought that was interesting. So they sell birds, cats, all kinds of stuff. It was quite interesting. So we were there for 2 days. And yeah, really enjoyed that. This guy brought an owl, so he had a cool owl with interesting eyes. He had an eagle too, so he was one of the vendors. He came in and he showed us a bunch of stuff. Yeah, brought his cat. That was pretty cool. It's got the nice eyes. And so there's some of the kind of the funnier pictures, right? So he's helping him get his hair ready. And so there was a lot of these kind of interesting interactions of like because this was I think at the amusement park. So there was quite a few times where people would like they would switch headgear and they would kind of just try to style each other. So it was just again very interesting and very surreal experience. Um,
Anything of like the sensibilities of one man touching another man, or sharing scarves, all that was like fair game.
no, they actually hold hands pretty commonly. So
Right.
it's
That I
quite
know.
common
Yeah.
for them to hold hands. So but no, not I mean again, like I'm not sure. I think just because it's a fairly poor country, I think a lot of times they would share things pretty wildly.
Mm.
So yeah, no, I not that I noticed at least. They would switch sunglasses and oh, one guy gave me his watch. So he gave me his watch. So that was so, again, people were friendly. He was like, "Take my watch, remember me." I'm like, so that was it was interesting.
Yeah. This
Um,
particular hat. Anything significant about that? Because we saw it on another person as well.
Yeah, so these are super common. So the whole goal of these hats is so you put this on your head, but then if it's really hot outside, you put a scarf over top of it. So the hat gives it some space so that there's air between the head and the scarf, which makes you a lot cooler. So it's kind of this double combined, it's actually has got a good amount of utility. And then also it's just a big outfit choice. So I mean, and they're pretty inexpensive. I think they're like $5, $6, $7. And so most people would have multiple hats and scarves. And so I think that's part of the clothes that they switch pretty frequently.
And what's the currency in Afghanistan?
It's the Afghani.
The
So
Afghan.
it has surprisingly been quite stable actually since the US left. So surprisingly, the currency, and I mean, good for them, the currency has not done as bad as many people had been afraid. So it's been weirdly stable. And oh yeah, there's another picture of the sketchy car transport situations. And that was it. That was the series. I have loads more that I haven't edited yet. There's a lots of interesting stuff, but yeah, I want to go back and get a bunch more till and then yeah.
Anything, any anti-American, billboards or paintings on sides of walls, any of that, or is that gone as well?
No, so again, this gets so it's okay. One of the fascinating things, and I can stop sharing just because
Yeah, and
um
if anyone has a question, raise your hand or put it in the chat room. Now would be the time.
so so one of the fascinating things really was I I'm okay. If you ask somebody whose whatever brother, sister, mother was killed in an airstrike, right, they would probably still be quite pissed about that. But I would say largely you could go as an American and no one would be like mad at you because you were American. If you did something rude, anything like that, that would be very different. But so there's generally no specific anti-Americanism. One of the things I found interesting is their entire. So I talked to many of their intelligence people because they would always come up like once every day or once every other day. Somebody would come like check what are they up to. Their entire intelligence group runs on WhatsApp. So they use WhatsApp for all their communications, and they're apparently required to do that. So again, tons of conspiracy theories. I really have no idea what's true and what's not, but a lot of people think that the Americans still have a lot of influence. And I mean, US is still shipping $40 million in cash a week to the
Mhm.
to the Taliban government, right? So they're trying to keep that government stable because what happens if that government falls is way worse than what's currently happening. And
Right.
so there's this like again, again, it's just so many conspiracy theories, but no, it's I there's nothing anti-American. I think you would have a hard time finding somebody to say something negative about the US.
Well,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
Uh,
I think it would be you would have to actually try, and I'm sure you would eventually, but like
yeah.
it's not like everyone's like it's not like people in the street chanting like "Death to America" type stuff. I saw zero of that. Yeah.
Okay. Barbara has a question. Unmute yourself, Barbara, and let us know.
Yeah, okay. I got to get this out of my system because I want to find out now what's the story now between the Ukraine and what is it? With the war and this and that. Trump stepped in and did what he needed to do. We had them both together, the Russians and Ukraine, and suppose he was all fixed or not bombing anymore. But what's the story now? Where is it going? You know what I
I,
mean?
Yeah, I don't know, Barbara, if any one of us here can answer that question of where it's going in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
All we know that all those people are living in hell. I mean
I
that
know exactly. Well, the pictures that Stephan, I tell you right now, it lightened my heart, my spirit to know that as a journalist like him to get these pictures, they're phenomenal. And I hope and pray that this gets out there to places where obviously he's notarized and we have a little feeling for these people in the
yeah.
Ukraine. They're not
Well,
bad. They're
well,
not bad Afghanistan people. They're not. There must be very good people. I live 5 blocks from the World Trade Center. I thought everything come in. After that, I saw all these people wearing the hijab and this and that down here. All it after a couple months later, after all this happened, then you saw a resurge of all these kind of people coming in. Now you see them all over. I'm in Tribeca. There are, so many people. They're like normal now with the headdress and this and that. It's unbelievable where we've gone from that happening to where we are now in this country. Anyway, shut up. So I just want to thank Stephan. He's fabulous. Thank you so much, Frank. You're the best. I'm addicted to your programs.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
out of here.
great, Barbara. That's very very nice and very revealing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
about how things change over time. Anyone
Yeah.
else have any questions? So, Stefan, any thought of doing a book? Any, where do you go next with a project like this? And again, I think everyone has to, stop for a second and realize this was in a makeshift studio. Those
Yeah,
images, that's really like the other incredible piece of this body of work.
yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with it yet, to be honest. I kind of went and did it just because I really, really wanted to go do it. It was kind of hard to tell how it was going to turn out. I didn't really know, was I going to get anything? Was I going to just get in trouble on the second day and have to like flee the country, right? So I literally had no idea how it was going to go. So it went way better I had no security problems. At the first trip, I kind of I didn't get kidnapped. I got kind of stuck for like 8 hours and I was allowed to leave. So I don't kind of like, but this time I had no problems really of any major kind. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it was honestly, it went surprisingly smooth. A lot of that was because I was on I had really good fixers that really made a large difference.
Mm.
But yeah, no, I think I'm going to Lebanon and Syria in December. And then I think I'm going back to Afghanistan in Feb. I really want to go. So what people don't realize, it's absolutely frigid in Kabul in the winter, like minus 20 Fahrenheit. And so
Wow.
it's absolutely freezing. Yeah, people kind of think it's like hot the whole time, but it is not. And so I kind of want to go when everyone's going to be like super like warm dressed. So I think
Sure.
that'll be interesting. And then I'll go up in the north. And so yeah, there's a few different ones that I want to go check out. So I think it'll be pretty interesting. So
Stefan,
and
I
then
just want
I
to,
think
yeah,
it's gonna be a book.
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
should be a documentary, personally. A
I
documentary.
don't. That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out what to do. I honestly, I
Yeah,
think I need 2, 3 more trips, and then I'll figure out
okay.
what to really do. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It's going really well. So
Well,
it went way better than I thought it would.
yeah, well, let Frank know, and I'm going to be there for whatever it is you're doing, okay? Love you a
I
lot.
appreciate that.
And, and Stefan, you said it very quickly, but it really is true in so much of the work we see. The fixers are really the unsung heroes of these kinds of projects, right? Like you can't get into countries, you can't navigate the streets without these local folks. It's really,
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, like, and I think a lot of photographers really undervalue that side. Like, I have a lot of photographer friends that do amazing photography work, but they're not as good at getting to places, right? And I think to me, like, I'm a solidly okay photographer, but I think I'm really good at getting to where interesting stuff is happening, right? And then setting it up and then figuring out how do you get the permits and how do you not immediately get in trouble, right? And then how do you deal with it when you do get in trouble? And so I think it's interesting in this like part of photography. It's just like it's two completely because one is just a pure people-based skill set, right? So you just need to be personable, you need to be friendly. I don't speak the language, but I can smile and I'm friendly and it always works out, right? So I think there's this kind of two aspects to being like this conflict and just obviously weird like this conflict fine art isn't really a thing, right? But it kind of like oddly goes into that direction. And so that's also why I'm not quite sure what to do with it yet because it doesn't fit anything, which is why I wanted to do it that way. I thought it would be interesting. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and also showing the fixers and showing pulling back from the studio to really see what is because so many times we do presentations and it would be wonderful to just have that shot like 20 feet back so you see everything. Aline has a question.
Yeah,
Um,
Stefan, did you encounter any other tourists or any tourists on the
Great
way?
question.
And
Yes.
were there any women traveling alone?
Yes, to both. Okay, so I
Yes.
was staying at the Serena Hotel, which is the nicest hotel in Kabul. It was like 250 a night. It was quite nice. Like it was nice. My room was big, the service was great, there was good food. The security was a pain in the ass. It took like 15 to 20 minutes to get through all the security to get into the hotel. So it was like it was a whole deal. But the food was really good. And so I would say at any given night there would be me and maybe 20 other tourists there.
What
A
were they
lot of
doing
India,
during the day?
Asia.
Well,
There was both tourists, and there was a lot of business people. So there's a lot of people coming from mining, investment, that type of stuff. But also I met like a Greek couple. They just randomly found my tent. They're like, "What the hell are you doing?" So they were very friendly. I met them. It's kind of interesting. People kind of stay to themselves. I think there's a lot of language barriers, but there's a lot of Germans. There was kind of really kind of everything. And there were women that were traveling by themselves. And so I asked, and so it is kind of weird, but so foreign women don't fall under the women rules the same way as local women do. So you would have to wear a headscarf, right? And you could
Right.
not do inappropriate things, right? You would in fact get in trouble for doing anything like that. But as long as you're respectful, you don't really fall into the man category, but you don't really fall into the women categories. It's this like awkward gray space, from my understanding. You would generally want to be with a man of some kind, and you would want to have good documentation of that. But like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, so if you get caught by the religious police or if a man and a woman that are not married get caught in an awkward situation by the religious police, their punishment is they get married. They literally take them to church and they get married. So it's, I mean, again, like this, and so the situation for women is quite bad. The situation for everyone is quite bad, right? I mean, there's very strict rules. It is very Islamic, right? There's just this very strict interpretation of Islam that they're following. And so, yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult for everyone. And again, it's just
Are
also extremely poor on top of that.
are
And
families monogamous or are couples
Sorry, say it
monogamous?
again, please.
Monogamous? Are couples monogamous or
Um, I would assume, I mean, I'm assuming there's infidelity, but also there's multiple marriages. So
yeah.
generally what happens is that, for example, if your brother dies, frequently you would then marry his wife, so she's not in a very bad situation. So that is pretty common. It is expensive because obviously suddenly your family grows a lot larger, so it's not super like frequent, but yes, it happens a lot. So there is multiple marriages.
and
And all the marriages are arranged, which was quite interesting. And generally first and second cousins, just because people want to stay within the family. So it's a very different that whole side of the culture works quite differently.
Stefan Volker has a question.
Yeah, from Stefan to
Thank
Stefan.
you. Thank you.
On your Instagram, you have your website listed, but it doesn't work. Do you have a website?
It just broke like a month ago, and I have gotten around to fixing it. So I apologize. I should take it down and then put up a new one at some point. I haven't published any, so you guys are really kind of the first people seeing these pictures. I haven't published them in any way yet, so I'm still trying to sort through that. But yeah, my Instagram has a fair amount, and then I will try to get my website back up and working. Sorry for the broken link.
No
Hmm.
problem.
All right. Well, what's next for you, Stefan? I mean, it is in the middle of the night in France, so like, give us your final comment. Let us know what you're doing, and send us off for the evening.
I'm really excited to go back. So yeah, I'll go back in February. I'll probably go back to Afghanistan in August again. I want to see the South too, and then yeah, I'm doing Syria in December. So it should be an exciting few months. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll keep you in the loop. I'll have a whole couple more series coming on the Afghanistan side, and then I'll figure out how to turn into a book or an article or something. So if anyone has any exciting ideas, would love to
Well,
collaborate in something.
yes, and certainly we'll have you back. But when you say you're going to go to Syria, will you do the same type of a portrait setup, or do you don't know, or what?
No, this is more of it's kind of like what I did with Afghanistan too, is this more of an exploratory trip. I
Mhm.
find it hard. Like again, I'm fortunate enough is I don't need to immediately make money off of these trips, right? So I don't necessarily go with it, this is what I want to get.
Mm.
And so this is more of the go figure out what the country is about and what's happening and all that, and then I will go back. I do really am kind of debating, do I try to turn this into more of a series of like do I try to get the new president of Syria, right? Like do I try to make more of that type of a series out of it? So I don't really know yet, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'm really liking this kind of like studio portrait kind of setup just because no one else is doing it, and I really like doing them. They're fun to do. It's just kind of weird and interesting. And again, I kind of like the fact I can show the people, not so much like it's not like as soon as you do street, right? It's much more about the environment and all that, right? Which
Mm.
also very interesting. But I kind of like this like pure play. It's just about the people, right? And so I can
Yeah.
get the eyes, I can get the hands, I can get the faces and the clothes. And so, yeah.
All right, great. One thing, everyone, you have a bit of homework. I need a new word for that because it can't be called a studio. It has to be called something else. I mean, it looks like a studio and it shoots like a studio, but there's got to be something else that that you've put together that registers as a studio. Stefan has another question.
Yeah,
Last
last one.
question. Here we go.
Uh, is there any usage for these pictures? Are you publishing them, or are you? I mean, you said you're planning a book. What are you working as a photographer, like in a commercial way or in a commercial
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, so I've done a lot more. Most of my photography is more in the like straight news side. Like for example, in Georgia, I was for BBC and Al Jazeera. So it really depends. This obviously doesn't fit that, so I'm trying to figure out what to do. I again because I didn't know what or if I was going to get anything, I didn't really go with anything in mind yet. And so even now that I have them, I still don't quite know what I'm going to do with them. But yeah, it's be a book. I'll try to publish it. I'll figure out some way of doing something interesting with it. Again, I want to share the stories, and I gotta write. I gotta do write-ups, right? I mean, a lot of the interesting bits here is obviously hearing that the guy's a suicide bomber, right? You wouldn't just guess. And so I gotta do a bunch more work and put it all together. But so yeah, I mean, the goal would be to publish it somewhere somehow.
Pitch it to National Geographic.
Yeah,
I'll
That
try to
would
get you
be
a name.
that
yeah.
would be amazing. I would much
Yeah,
appreciate that. That'd be cool.
Linda's the greatest, and Linda and I will share your email address. So with that, Stefan, go to sleep. It's 2:30 in the morning in France, and I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I can't thank everyone enough for coming in. Miriam and Barbara and Nancy and Aline and Linda always and Howard, Stefan, Tony, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in. And our next projection is December 3rd, and you'll get notices on that. Stefan, be safe.